Friends, today we bring you a breathtaking story that will leave you shocked and emotional. A story of survival, betrayal, and the incredible courage of a single father who refused to look away when he heard a desperate cry for help. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and of course subscribe to our channel so you never miss another powerful story like this one. Make sure to watch this video all the way to the end. You won't believe how it unfolds. And tell us in the comments, which country are you watching this from? We'd love to know where our family of viewers is joining us from around the world. So without further delay, let's get started. On the outskirts of the quiet American town of San Angelo, Texas, a 40-year-old carpenter named Leonard Aguilar lived a modest life with his 8-year-old daughter, Gabriella. He was a widowed father, careful and deliberate in all things, locking every door at night, keeping his tools neatly arranged, and tending a small backyard garden of mint and chili peppers. Life moved at a measured pace until one afternoon when everything changed. As was his habit, Leonard walked the unused field near the edge of Lakeside Park, a place he visited daily to clear his mind before returning home to cook dinner for his daughter. The dry ground cracked beneath his boots, the roots of dead trees poking out like skeletal hands. Then he heard it, a thin, desperate sound that sent a shiver up his spine. Help! It was faint, a strangled whisper that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Leonard froze, tilted his head, and followed the sound around a mound of dirt that jutted out like a tumor on the barren ground. A child's muffled sobbing pierced the silence. His throat tightened. He knelt, brushed away the grass, and peered into a pit. Down in the narrow, suffocating trench, a small boy no more than 6 clutched a woman buried up to her chest in soil. The boy's face was streaked with tears, his tiny shoulders trembling as he tried to shield her with his frail body. The woman's lips were cracked from thirst, her hair tangled with dirt and roots. She pressed her head sideways just to leave a pocket of air for her son. Leonard's breath caught. He asked no questions. What words could matter now? He dropped to his knees, clawing at the soil with his bare hands until his nails burned. With his multi-tool knife, he slashed through roots tough as rope. His voice was steady, deep, a carpenter's rhythm guiding each breath. "I'm here. I'll get you both out. Look at me, kid. Breathe with me, that's it." The ground caved. In under his boots, rocks cutting into his fingers, but the hole widened. At last, with one desperate heave, Leonard pulled the woman and child free. The 3 of them collapsed onto the grass. The woman coughed violently, her eyes closed tight. Deep red marks from rope burns scarred her wrists. The boy clung to her hand, his body shaking. Leonard unscrewed his canteen and tilted it carefully against her cracked lips, letting the water drip slowly so she wouldn't choke. She drank greedily, as though she had wandered through an endless night without dawn. Then, her hands shot out, clutching his wrist with surprising force. Her voice was a rasp, barely audible. Don't take us to a hospital. He'll find me." Leonard looked at the raw rope marks, the terrified child, and the dark pit yawning behind them. He knew she might be right. Whoever had buried them alive would notice if she turned up in a public place. He nodded once, no argument. "First, I'll get you out of here. Then we'll figure out the rest." He lifted the boy onto one arm, supported the woman with the other, and led them to his weathered pickup truck. He strapped them in, tucked a thin blanket around their shoulders, the same one he always kept for Gabriella, and started the engine. The truck rumbled, but in his mind beat a steadier sound. "If I let fear stop me, they'll die in silence." Taking side roads to avoid attention, Leonard sent a quick text to his daughter. "Still at school? I'll be home a little late." A smiley face flashed back before the screen dimmed. His grip on the wheel tightened, nails still packed with dirt from the grave. In the rearview mirror, he saw the woman trembling, clutching her son as though the world itself might rip him away. The pickup turned into Leonard's driveway. He closed the gate, locked it, and guided them toward the shed out back, a cluttered space with old shelves and a dismantled workbench. Inside, he laid down a thin mattress, helped the woman sit, and set the boy beside her. Then, kneeling before them, he spoke slowly, clearly, so she would know he was on her side. "What's your name? Who buried you and your boy alive?" She swallowed hard, but her voice steadied. "Maria Fernandez. My son's name is Nicholas." Leonard introduced himself. "Leonard Aguilar. Just me and my daughter here. She's at school back this afternoon." Maria clutched his hand, nails digging into his skin, her eyes shattered with fear. "Please, no hospital. Don't call anyone." "He has people everywhere." Leonard said nothing more. He fetched warm water, stirred in the last drops of honey he had in the kitchen, and pressed the mug into her hands. As Nicholas's breathing eased, Leonard sat in the dim shed, oil heater humming, the ticking of the wall clock filling the silence. His voice was calm, resolute. "We'll choose the time and place to be seen. Not him. For now, all that matters is you and your boy breathing steady." Maria studied his face for a long moment, then nodded faintly. Trust flickered in her eyes, fragile but alive. And then, with trembling lips, she whispered the truth that would drag Leonard into a storm far larger than he imagined. "The man who buried us is my husband." Leonard didn't waste breath on shock. He checked the side gate twice, slid the steel bolt into place, and drew the shed's canvas curtain across the small window. The oil heater hummed low, warmth pooling around Maria and her boy as their shivers slowly eased. He brewed weak tea, stirred in the last ribbon of honey from a sticky jar, and set it in Maria's trembling hands. "Here, small sips," he said. "You're safe for now." Maria's gaze kept darting to the door. The ropes had chewed her wrists raw. The angry grooves looked like they'd been burned in. Nicholas pressed his cheek to her shoulder, eyes wide and watchful, like a fawn that had outrun the brush fire but could still smell the smoke. "Who is he?" Leonard asked quietly. Her mouth worked once before the words came out. "My husband," she whispered. "Clement Dominic." And he didn't act alone. The name hit Leonard like a hammer he hadn't seen coming. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask how. He just nodded, stood, and moved through the rituals that steadied him. Wash a basin, fold a blanket, recheck the lock. The rhythm of useful work slowed his pulse. On his way back through the kitchen, he thumbed a quick text to his daughter. "Homework at home, kiddo. I'll be a little late. Remember doors and windows." A bubble popped up Gabriella's reply. Tiny blue heart, then vanished. A soft chime sounded from the gate camera. Mrs. Elodia, the neighbor who'd lived on the block longer than the streetlights, stood outside the fence with a grocery bag and concern written all over her face. Leonard pressed the intercom. "Everything okay, Mrs. E?" "Leonard, honey, at noon I saw." A black sedan near the alley paused, then rolled off slow. "Maybe nothing, but keep your eyes open." "Got it, thank you." His voice stayed even. No reason to spread fear, and every reason to act like an ordinary afternoon. "Let me know if you see it again." Back in the shed, Maria had stopped shaking. Nicholas had not. Leonard knelt to the boy's level. "Breathe with me, bud. In. 2. Out. 2. He modeled the rhythm until the child's shoulders loosened a notch. An email alert buzzed Leonard's phone. Unknown sender, no subject. He hesitated, turned the screen away from Maria's eyes, and tapped it open. A single photo filled the display, his truck's license plate, shot close and low, dust haloed in the flash taken minutes ago. Beneath it, 3 words that tightened the air in his lungs. "Don't get involved." Leonard didn't curse. He archived. The image flipped on 2-factor for every account he owned, changed the recovery email to one no one else knew, and opened a secure note. He typed 2 names he'd once hoped never to need again. Daniel Herrera and Jorge George Mears. Daniel had been a classmate, now a compliance analyst at a regional bank in San Angelo. When the line picked up, Leonard spoke cleanly and short his carpenter's habit of cutting true on the first pass. He told Daniel about the pit, the rope burns, and 3 names: Clement Dominic, Veronica Sanchez, and an attorney rumored to launder problems into paperwork, Emilio Vargas. If there were transfers from a health foundation into shell accounts, Leonard said, especially after the date Maria disappeared, that's your nail in the coffin. Silence. Paper shuffled on Daniel's end. Finally, if money moved after she vanished, I can trace timestamp, signer, and device trail. But you keep your head down. I'll call back. Leonard ended the call and texted George Mears, the ex-driver who once ferried Clement to dinners where the bourbon ran deeper than the truth. They met in the back lot of a diner where the Assis rumble drowned stray ears. George handed Leonard a scarred flip phone and a silver thumb drive. "Don't want this in my house," George muttered. One night she said it plain. "I hit record." "Because I couldn't not." Leonard plugged in wired earbuds. Glass clinked. A chair scraped. Then a woman's voice, clean, cold, soft as a shard of ice. "When she's gone, it's all ours." A man's low laugh followed. Leonard didn't need a label to recognize the kind of power that believed in its own invisibility. He clasped George's hand. "You did right. Just don't let my name surface," George said with a crooked smile. "Sometimes silence helps evil. I'm done being quiet." Leonard drove to the glass and steel tower off Palanca Avenue as dusk pinked the sky. He buttoned a dark shirt, slid on thin-rimmed glasses, and checked in with a guest badge under a different name, Mr. Aranda. On the top floor, he was ushered into a conference room bright enough to show fingerprints on the table. Emilio Vargas rose from the head chair, mid-40s, tailored suit, shoes that announced money before he spoke. "Mr. Aranda," he said smoothly, "we handle delicate assets with absolute discretion, especially for clients who know how to behave." Leonard said a shallow bait terms he'd memorized, structure he didn't want but needed Vargas to outline aloud. "I'm considering a 3-tier shell. Health foundation to education, cover letters of cooperation, public funding veneer. A clean look if anyone checks." Vargas's eyes warmed, flattered by a connoisseur. He slid over a sample flow. "Parent abroad. To reserve. Accounts. Electronic signatures routed through a secretary so a real hand never touches the paper. On audit, it smiles back." As Vargas talked, Leonard thumbed the micro-recorder in his pocket. "Click on." He kept his breathing even. "I'll need the approval chain, who signs first, who signs last, and typical closing windows. My investors value certainty." Vargas obliged, tapping the page. "Certainty is our specialty." Leonard's phone buzzed. Gabriella. He forced a polite nod, turned away, and answered. His daughter's voice threaded through small, quick, steady. "Dad, I heard a child in the shed. I cracked the back door. There's a woman holding a little boy. They looked scared. I closed it again. Is someone in our yard?" His pulse kicked, but his tone stayed level. "Into the house. Lock every door. Curtains closed. Stand 1 step back from the door and talk to no one. I'm coming. Home." He pocketed the phone, pasted a client's smile on his face. "Email me the term sheet and full approval chain," he told Vargas, already rising. "I'll review tonight. If it matches, we'll close this week." Vargas nodded, confident. "You'll be pleased, Mr. Aranda." Leonard reached his truck, snapped photos of the paperwork, checked the recorder, clean audio, every brag intact, and took the back roads toward home. At the gate, he hit the opener. A brick thudded against the iron bars, wrapped in a sheet of paper scrawled in thick, impatient letters. "Stop digging." Maria appeared in the shed doorway at the noise, fingers gripping her blouse. Leonard folded the note in half, voice the same. One he'd used to teach Gabby to tie her shoes. "Because they know," he said, "we're not going back underground. And fear makes people sloppy. That's how trails leak. Inside, Nicholas coughed once and settled. Gabriella hovered in the kitchen doorway, pale with the kind of guilt kids feel for doing the right thing too fast. Leonard touched her shoulder. You did the most important part, he said. You closed the door and called me. He moved to his desk, slid the recorder into a secure folder, and sent copies of the term sheet and audio to Daniel with a one-line note. Vargas's education. Cover check dates and signers. A green delivered dot popped up. Daniel replied, I'll run the signatures against login logs tonight. Leonard looked back to Maria. The attorney's name is Emilio Vargas. He bragged about turning a health fund into a school mask. We have his voice, his diagram, and his chain. We still need the signer who pressed your name. Her answer came not from her mouth, but from his inbox, an alias account he'd spun up an hour earlier. Subject, I'm sorry. Sender, Ana Torres Vargas's former assistant. I have emails with the digital signature requests. Don't call me. I'll send them. Leonard exhaled for the first time that day. Outside, the evening light thinned to silver. He rechecked the locks. He rechecked the plan forming in his head. And in the shed, Maria's eyes found his and held, no longer begging, now bracing. Tomorrow, Leonard said, voice low and certain. We stop letting them write the story. Night settled heavy over San Angelo, the kind of silence where every creak of wood and tick of a clock sounded like a gunshot. Leonard checked each lock twice before stepping back into the shed. Maria sat upright against the wall, Nicholas asleep. Across her lap, his breath shallow but steady. The boy's fingers still clutched the hem of her blouse, even in dreams. Leonard pulled a chair close, lowering his voice. You'll be safe here tonight. Tomorrow we start pushing back. Maria's eyes, rimmed red from exhaustion, flicked to his. Safe? They think I'm already dead. If they realize I'm alive, they'll come for my son. Leonard met her gaze evenly. Then we make sure they see the truth on our terms, not theirs. A faint buzz on his phone broke the quiet. An encrypted message slid across the screen from Daniel Herrera. 3 large transfers post-disappearance. Digitally signed under her name. Logs show secretary's device. Timestamped clean. It's enough to open a case. Leonard's jaw set. Enough to open, not enough to close. He needed something undeniable. Before dawn, another message landed in the anonymous inbox. Ana Torres again. Attached, contracts, digital signature calendar, Maria's forged approval. Don't reply. Leonard downloaded, decrypted, and printed the pages. Each one bore Maria's name, neat and false, dated weeks after she had been buried alive. He spread them across the workbench like rotten planks. Evidence, ugly but strong. By morning, his daughter padded into the shed doorway, rubbing her eyes. A tray of cookies balanced in her hands. She set them down wordlessly, glanced at Maria and Nicholas, then at her father. Leonard laid a hand on Gabriella's shoulder. You did good, Mia. This stays between us until it's time. That afternoon, the pieces began to connect. Daniel delivered a slim dossier, financial trails as precise as dovetail joints. George's USB recording, Ana's emails, Vargas's bragging blueprint, all males in the same coffin. Leonard pinned them to a corkboard he dragged from the garage. Strings tying names and dates together. Clement Dominic, Veronica Sanchez, Emilio Vargas. The lines converged like rafters in a roof, pointing at the rod at the center. Maria stepped forward, marker trembling in her grip. She circled a date. That was the night I vanished. Another circle. That was the fundraiser, the first. Transfer. Her hand steadied as she marked each wound in her timeline. Then she looked up, voice no longer fragile. I want to say it myself. In front of everyone. I survived. That night, Gabriella curled up on the couch with her homework, while Leonard dialed trusted allies. Detective Carolyn Mendez from the district attorney's office. Community leader Jose Luis Martinez, who could put a microphone in front of 1,000 ears. Plans spun like shavings off a plain sharp piling, ready to be shaped. The next evening, under the chandeliers of the Cantoral Cultural Center, the lights dimmed. The audience hushed. Jose Luis adjusted the mic, his voice calm and warm, as he introduced a short memorial presentation. The screen lit up with shaky footage, the rusted vent pipe over a grave, the ragged breathing from beneath. Gasps rippled through the hall. Then the recording from George's USB crackled into life. Veronica's voice, cold as glass. "When she's gone, it's all ours." Clement's laugh followed. In the fifth row, Clement lurched to his feet, face red, voice booming. "Lies. A montage." Leonard rose from the side aisle, stepping into the stage light. His voice cut steady, like a chisel against oak. "If it's fake, why does your digital signature show up after the day Maria disappeared? Why does Vargas brag about the shell cover while your accounts swallow the money?" Daniel stepped forward, lifting the bank records to the cameras. Dates and amounts glared across the screen, unyielding. The audience leaned in, silent as nails being driven. Electricity flickered. A shadow darted across the rafters. The main projector died sabotage. But Jose Luis wheeled out a backup, screen flickering back alive within seconds. The truth glared brighter than before. At that moment, Maria walked on stage. Her wrists still bore the fading bruises of rope, her son clutching her hand from the wing. She faced the hall with a voice stripped of fear. "I am not dead." The words weren't loud, but they struck like a gavel. People shifted forward in their seats, pulled by the weight of survival itself. Maria locked eyes with Veronica. "He buried me alive, and you signed the papers to erase us." Veronica paled, shrinking against her chair. Clement shouted again. But no one listened. The air had shifted. The hall belonged to the truth now. Outside, police in plainclothes waited at the exits. Inside, the web of lies had finally begun to collapse. The cultural center buzzed with attention, so thick it felt like the walls themselves were listening. Clement's shouts bounced uselessly off the high ceiling as the audience leaned toward the screen, toward Maria's steady voice. Beside the stage, Detective Carolyn Mendez raised a discreet hand, signaling her plainclothes officers to close in. "Sit down, Mr. Dominic," she said firmly from the aisle, her badge glinting under the lights. "This isn't your show anymore." The moment stretched, then snapped as two officers stepped forward. Clement tried to push past them, but the cameras caught every second, the struggle, the restraint, the cuffs snapping tight. Veronica Sanchez sat frozen, her face drained of its practiced charm, while Emilio Vargas dabbed sweat from his forehead, eyes darting for an escape that wasn't there. The backup projector rolled on, displaying the forged contracts, time-stamped. Signatures and transfers tied to the Health Foundation. Each line of text was another nail in the coffin. The audience murmured, the tide turning fast. Maria gripped the podium, Nicholas peeking from behind her legs. Her voice cut through the noise. "You tried to bury me. But tonight, in front of everyone, I choose to live and I choose to fight. For my son." Applause erupted, not polite, but fierce, rising like a storm. The truth had found its light. That night, though, Leonard's phone buzzed with a new chill. A text, a photo. His daughter Gabriella, silhouetted at their home window, yellow kitchen light glowing behind her. Beneath it, 3 words, "Your little girl." His heart froze. He kept his face unreadable so Maria and the others wouldn't panic, but inside, his blood pounded. He excused himself from the stage, slipped out to the parking lot, and dialed Detective Mendez with steel in his voice. "They're watching my house. Just got proof. My daughter's in danger." Mendez's tone sharpened. "Stay calm. A patrol unit is closest heading there now. Don't go inside alone. Wait for backup." Leonard's tires squealed onto side streets, headlights off until he neared his block. Mrs. Elodia stood at the gate, phone clutched in her hand, eyes wide. She whispered through the bars. 2 cars circled the street. 1 man lingered by. Your backyard. He's gone now, but I heard the fence rattle. Leonard called his daughter. Her voice trembled, but she followed every instruction he'd drilled into her. I'm in the kitchen, Dad. Doors locked, curtains drawn. I can hear someone breathing outside. He forced calm into his tone. Stay where you are, sweetheart. I'm almost there. Don't speak again until you hear me. He slipped through the side gate, hugging the wall. A low male voice drifted from the porch. Come on out. Just a minute of your time. Leonard texted Mendez 1 word. Now. Headlights cut the dark. A patrol car glided to a stop, lights flashing without siren. 3 officers moved in fast. Within seconds, the man at the porch was face down, wrists cuffed. A wad of cash and a phone spilling from his pockets. The screen still glowed with Vargas's name in the message thread. Detective Mendez arrived minutes later, her tone sharp as a blade. Who paid you? The man stammered, shaking. Vargas said, scare the girl. Keep her quiet. Gabriella burst from the kitchen when she saw her father, wrapping her arms around his waist. Her small voice cracked through tears. I did what you told me. I didn't scream. I called Mrs. Elodia. I called you. Leonard knelt, brushing her hair back. You were perfect, brave. That's why you're safe. Maria stood at the shed doorway, clutching Nicholas. Relief softened her eyes for the first time since the pit. But fear still lingered. If Vargas was desperate enough to send men to a child's window, then the storm was far from over. Detective Mendez's phone buzzed. She read, face grim. They filed an emergency petition, claiming Maria is unstable. They want custody of Nicholas transferred. Hearings at dawn. Leonard felt the weight of it, but his voice came steady, iron laid across wood. Then, tomorrow we don't just defend. We put everything on the table. Every forged signature, every stolen dollar, every buried lie. Maria drew Nicholas closer. For the first time, she didn't look like a hunted woman. She looked like someone preparing to stand in court and say, before judge and world alike, I survived. Morning broke cold and pale over the courthouse in downtown San Angelo. The wooden benches inside the chamber filled with reporters, neighbors, and officials who had caught wind of the scandal. On one side of the aisle sat Clement Dominic, jaw clenched, suit impeccable, trying to wear the mask of a businessman instead of a man accused of burying his own wife. Beside him, Veronica Sanchez and Emilio Vargas whispered with their attorney, who smoothed his tie and prepared to spin a web of lies. Across the room, Maria Fernandez sat with her son Nicholas pressed against her hip. Her hands shook, but her chin stayed high. Leonard took the seat beside her, his presence quiet but solid, like a beam bracing a collapsing roof. Behind them, Gabriella leaned forward on the bench, her small fingers curled around her father's sleeve, her eyes sharp for a child her age. Judge Patricia Calmanar, known in the county as the Hammer, took her seat. Her voice was calm but cutting. We are here for an emergency hearing regarding custody of the minor child Nicholas Fernandez, and to address allegations of fraud and attempted homicide tied to Mr. Dominic's foundation. She struck the gavel once. Proceed. The defense lawyer rose first, his tone syrupy. Your Honor, our clients only seek the well-being of the child. Mrs. Fernandez has a documented history of emotional instability. We have concerns she removed the child from a safe environment. We ask for immediate transfer of custody. Judge Calmanar's eyes narrowed. I want evidence, counselor, not slogans. Carolyn Mendez, the prosecutor, stood next. Her voice carried the weight of steel. Evidence we have, Your Honor. She gestured to Daniel Herrera, who approached with a thick binder. These are banking records, Daniel said, laying them on the podium. 3 major transfers from the Dominic Health Foundation occurred after Maria Fernandez disappeared. Each bears her digital signature. Each was authorized from the secretary's device within Vargas's office. Here are the access logs and IP addresses. They show deliberate fraud. The defense shifted uncomfortably. The judge scanned the documents, lips pressed thin. Ana Torres, trembling but resolute, stepped forward holding a USB drive. Your Honor, I worked in Vargas's office. These are internal emails. They show requests to forge Maria's digital approval on contracts she never saw. I stayed silent out of fear. Today I refuse to be silent. The room buzzed. Clement's face reddened. Veronica dropped her gaze, and Vargas pinched the bridge of his nose, sweat slicking his brow. Then came the independent handwriting expert, Arthur Beltran, who presented comparison charts. The signatures after her disappearance are digital clones. They lack the natural tremor, pauses, and ink pressure of her genuine writing. They are forgeries. Finally, Caroline nodded to Jorge Mears, the ex-driver. He set a small recorder on the evidence table. The room filled with the cold voice of Veronica Sanchez. When she's gone, it's all ours. Followed by Clement's unmistakable laugh. Gasps rippled through the benches. Reporters scribbled furiously. The defense attorney opened his mouth to object, but Judge Kalmanar cut him off with a raised hand. Accepted. Continue. Maria stood, her hand resting on Nicholas's back. Her voice wavered only at the start, then steadied. They buried me alive. My son heard my heart through the dirt. I survived because someone listened when I cried for help. I am here, not because I am unstable, but because I refuse to let my child grow up in fear. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the bailiff's boots seemed to pause mid-shift. Carolyn lifted the final document. Your Honor, along with the fraud and attempted murder, we have threats made directly to Mr. Aguilar's daughter, Gabriela, traced to Vargas's phone. This is not custody. This is corruption and conspiracy. Judge Kalmanar's gavel struck once, twice, then a third time. This court orders the immediate detention of Clement Dominic, Veronica Sanchez, and Emilio Vargas for fraud, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. Mrs. Fernandez is granted temporary custody of her son under the protection of Child Services. Full protective orders are enacted immediately. The clang of handcuffs echoed like justice itself. Clement snarled as deputies dragged him away. Veronica sobbed into her silk scarf. Vargas muttered excuses no one listened to. Maria sank onto the bench, Nicholas wrapped in her arms. Tears spilled silently, but they weren't of fear, they were of release. Leonard squeezed her shoulder, whispering so only she heard, "It's over, you won." But deep in his chest he knew, winning in court didn't erase scars. It only opened the door for what came next, building a life where fear no longer ruled. And for that, he would have to stand even stronger. The gavel's echo still rang in Leonard's ears, long after the courtroom emptied. Outside, the Texas sun fell golden across the courthouse steps, where reporters swarmed for sound bites. Carolyn Mendez shielded Maria with a firm arm as deputies escorted the cuffed conspirators into waiting vans. Flashbulbs popped, but Maria's eyes were on only one thing: her son Nicholas, clinging to her waist, alive and free. Leonard guided Gabriela through the crowd, his hand steady on her shoulder. She looked up at him, voice small but certain. "Dad, we helped them." He managed a smile, though weariness pulled at his bones. "Yeah, Mia, we did." That evening, they returned not to fear, but to a new beginning. Leonard opened the door of a modest house on the edge of the hills, a place offered by a friend of Caroline's while Child Services arranged formal protection. The air smelled of cedar and fresh paint. Inside was nothing fancy, just a wooden table, a stove, and space enough for 4 people to sit without feeling hunted. Gabriela and Nicholas darted to the backyard, chasing a stray kite caught in the branches. Their laughter rose like a sound neither Maria nor Leonard thought they'd hear again. Maria set down her small bag and stood in the kitchen, hands resting on the counter, the weight of survival finally easing. "You saved me twice," she said quietly, not turning around. "Once from the dirt, and once from silence." Leonard shook his head, rinsing his calloused hands under the faucet. "You saved yourself by refusing to stay buried. I just did what I could." That night, they ate simply rice, eggs, and a pot of chicken broth. Gabriella showed Nicholas how to fold paper boats, and he floated them in a bowl of water, giggling when they tipped. Maria watched, tears sliding freely but softly, as if her heart was learning how to beat without fear again. Later, when the children slept, Leonard and Maria sat on the porch. The hills stretched dark against the sky, crickets singing steady. Maria held a letter she'd received that morning from Clement in jail, a plea for forgiveness, a request to see his son. Her hands shook as she read it again, then folded it shut. "I won't open another grave," she whispered. "My son needs a father who protects, not a man who buries." Leonard said nothing at first. Then, with the quiet strength of a man who had measured twice and cut once his whole life, he answered, "Whatever choice you make, you won't make it alone." Weeks later, the Renaissance Foundation opened its doors in the town's cultural center. No music, no fanfare, just a circle of chairs, a corkboard for stories, and hot tea waiting. Survivors gathered to share, their words no longer whispers. On the wall hung a poster drawn by Gabriella and Nicholas together, a hand reaching from the ground toward a beam of light. Maria spoke to the group, her voice clear. "They tried to silence me with dirt and signatures. But today I stand with my son, and with all of you. This isn't about loss, it's about return." Applause wasn't thunderous. It was steady, warm like rain on dry soil. That night, back at the house, Leonard sat at the table while the children bickered playfully over crayons. Maria placed a cup of tea before him, and, for the first time since he'd found her in the pit, smiled without trembling. "They thought fear would keep us underground," Leonard said, lifting the cup. "But light doesn't need permission to break through." Outside, the wind swept softly across the hills, carrying away the last echoes of a nightmare. Inside, the small home glowed with something stronger than fear, something like family. And though scars remained, the message carved itself into the night as surely as a carpenter's mark into oak. Truth can be buried, but it cannot be killed.